I remember the moment everything changed, the moment my world crumbled beneath my feet. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow through the living room window, illuminating the small space we had called home for the past 5 years. I had just returned from work, exhausted but content. I could hear the soft hum of the television in the background, a familiar sound that usually signaled my wife, Sarah, was unwinding from her day. As I stepped inside, I expected to be greeted by her usual smile, perhaps a kiss on the cheek, and a question about my day. Instead, I was met with silence. The room felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that I couldn't quite place. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe she was just engrossed in whatever show she was watching. But as I approached the couch, I noticed her phone lying face down on the coffee table, an unusual sight given how attached she was to the device. Curiosity pricked at me and I picked it up. It was then that my heart began to race. Notifications lit up the screen, messages from a number I didn't recognize, filled with flirty emojis and phrases that made my stomach churn. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I was seeing. Who was this person? Why did she feel the need to hide their conversations? In that moment, a mix of shock, anger, and confusion washed over me. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss that threatened to swallow me whole. The irony of the situation hit me hard. Sarah had always been the one to talk about love and relationships, often giving advice to her friends about finding the one. Yet here she was, betraying the very principles she preached. It was almost surreal, like a cruel twist of fate. As I confronted her, my voice trembled with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "Who is he, Sarah?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. The tears in her eyes were not what I expected. They were a painful reminder that this was real, that my life was about to be irrevocably altered. "I can explain," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. But how could she explain something so monumental? My mind was racing with questions, memories flashing before me. Our wedding day, the laughter we shared, dreams we built together. How could she throw it all away for someone who claimed to be a dating coach? The anger bubbled up inside me and I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. I had trusted her completely, believed in our love. And now, standing there, I felt like a fool. The man she was involved with was supposed to be an expert in love, yet he had taken mine and twisted it into something grotesque. The revelation of her affair shattered my perception of our relationship. I had always viewed Sarah as my partner, my confidant, the one person I could rely on. Now, I was left grappling with the realization that I was just another chapter in her story, a story that she had chosen to rewrite with someone else. As the evening wore on, the weight of the truth settled heavily on my shoulders. I felt lost and betrayed, a storm of emotions swirling within me. The future I had envisioned began to fade, replaced by a dark uncertainty. How could I move forward from this? I didn't know, but I was determined to find out. The irony of her betrayal hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating and inescapable. I was left with a choice, to confront this pain head-on or to let it consume me. One thing was certain, I would not remain a passive victim in this twisted saga. The days that followed the confrontation felt like a blur. Each moment dragged on, heavy with the weight of betrayal. I replayed that evening over and over in my mind, searching for clues I might have missed, signs that could have warned me of the storm brewing beneath the surface of our marriage. The initial shock had subsided, replaced by a relentless curiosity and a burning need for answers. How could my wife, the woman I loved, cheat on me with a dating coach of all people? I began my investigation quietly, my heart racing with each step I took into the dark corners of my mind and our shared life. I was driven by a mix of anger and disbelief, fueled by the irony of her infidelity. This man, this so-called expert in love, had taken my wife's heart and with it my trust. I needed to know more about him, about their connection, and how deep this betrayal ran. I started with the messages I had seen on her phone. I knew I had to tread carefully. I didn't want to be the husband who snooped, but I felt I had no choice. I needed to gather evidence to understand the nature of their relationship. I scrolled through the text messages, each one more painful than the last. They were filled with sweet nothings, inside jokes, and plans that made my heart ache. It was clear that this was more than just a fling. There was an emotional connection that cut deeper than I had anticipated. The name that kept appearing was Jake. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the irony. My wife was seeking love advice from a single man. How could someone who specialized in relationships fail to maintain one himself? I found myself wondering if he even believed his own teachings. Determined to learn more about this Jake, I took to the internet. A few clicks led me to his social media profiles, where I found a polished image of a man who seemed to have it all figured out. He posted motivational quotes about love and relationships, often accompanied by pictures of him with various women, each one more attractive than the last. His life appeared to be a series of glamorous dates and adventures, a stark contrast to the mundane reality I was living. The irony stung. The man who was supposed to help others find love was instead destroying it. As I delved deeper, I discovered that Jake had a website where he offered coaching services. I couldn't help but feel a mix of disgust and intrigue. I had to see what kind of advice he was peddling. I signed up for one of his webinars, wanting to gain insight into his methods. As I sat there, listening to him speak about love as if it were a game, I felt a surge of anger. He spoke with such confidence, promising his audience the secrets to a successful relationship, all while he was dismantling mine. The more I learned about him, the more I realized just how ironic this situation was. Here was a man who thrived on the vulnerabilities of others, offering guidance while he himself was incapable of sustaining a meaningful relationship. I felt a sense of righteous indignation build up inside me. How could I let this man continue to ruin lives, to play with the hearts of people who sought his wisdom? I confronted Sarah again, armed with my newfound knowledge. Why him? Why Jake? I demanded, my voice shaking with emotion. The pain in her eyes was evident, but it was accompanied by something else, guilt perhaps, or shame. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought he could help me understand what I wanted, what I was missing in our marriage. Her words cut deep. Did she really believe that seeking love advice from a single man was the answer? The irony was suffocating. And what did you expect to find? Did you think he would teach you to love me better? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I was lost, and I thought he could guide me. Lost. That word echoed in my mind. We had built a life together, a partnership based on trust and love. How could she throw it all away for someone who claimed to be an expert in something he had yet to master himself? In that moment, I realized I needed to take control of the situation. I couldn't allow this man, this charlatan, to continue to disrupt my life. I needed to expose the truth, not just for my own sake, but for anyone else who might fall prey to his false promises. The anger I felt was now mixed with a sense of purpose. I would not stand idly by while this man continued to promote his twisted version of love. I would find a way to make sure he understood the consequences of his actions. And so the plan began to form in my mind. A plan for revenge that would ensure Jake would remain single forever, just like the heart he had broken. The weight of my discovery hung over me like a dark cloud, and I knew I had to confront Sarah again, this time with a more focused purpose. I had gathered my thoughts, the bitter irony of her affair simmering beneath the surface, fueling my resolve. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted to make her understand the gravity of what she had done. We sat across from each other at the dining table, a familiar setting that now felt foreign and hostile. The remnants of our shared life surrounded us, pictures of happier times, the wedding album tucked away on the shelf, and the half-empty bottle of wine we had opened for a romantic evening just days before everything fell apart. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as if our home had transformed into a battleground. Sarah, I began, my voice steady but laced with emotion. I need you to be honest with me. What did you think would happen with Jake? Did you really believe he could give you the answers you were looking for? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but that sympathy quickly faded as I remembered the betrayal. I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. I was confused. I thought maybe I could find something in myself that I had lost. Lost? I echoed, incredulity creeping into my tone. You lost something in our marriage. How could you not talk to me about it? Instead, you sought comfort in the arms of a man who thrives on broken hearts. She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. I thought he could help me understand what I wanted. Help you, I scoffed, the irony burning in my chest. He's a dating coach, Sarah. He's supposed to help people find love, yet here he is, tearing apart the very fabric of your marriage. What kind of advice could he possibly give that would justify this betrayal? Her silence spoke volumes, and I could see the realization dawning in her eyes. She had placed her trust in the wrong person, and now she was facing the consequences. I was looking for validation, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I wanted to feel desired again. Desired, I repeated, my anger flaring. You were desired, you had me. You didn't need some guy who can't even keep a relationship to make you feel that way. The conversation spiraled into a tangled mess of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion, and despair. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand the depth of her betrayal. But I also felt a part of me that wanted to reach out and comfort her, too. Remind her of the love we had built together. It was a conflicting battle, and I didn't know which side would win. Do you even care about what you've done? I pressed on, my voice rising. Do you understand the pain you've caused, the irony of seeking love advice from someone who's never truly loved? She burst into tears, the dam of her emotions breaking under the weight of my words. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, her hands trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was lost and I was looking for direction. Direction, I echoed, my heart aching despite my anger. You could have talked to me, Sarah. You could have come to me with your fears, your doubts. Instead, you chose to betray me. As the tears streamed down her cheeks, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. This confrontation was not just about her betrayal. It was about the fragility of trust and the complexities of love. I had to focus on my next steps, the revenge I had begun to plan against Jake. But I also realized that confronting Sarah about her choices was only part of the process. I needed to understand her motivations, to peel back the layers of her decision-making. In a way, this was therapeutic, an exploration of how we had both failed in our marriage. I need you to understand, I said, my voice softening slightly. This isn't just about you and Jake. This is about us, our life together. You've shattered my trust, and it's going to take time to rebuild it, if that's even possible. She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I know, I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I want to fix this. Fix this. The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded. I wasn't sure if I wanted to fix anything right now. What I wanted was clarity, revenge, and perhaps a path forward that didn't involve her or Jake. I felt that I needed to take control of my own narrative, to make sure that the man who had intruded into my life would face consequences for his actions. I need time to think, I finally said. But know this, I will not allow Jake to continue his charade, preying on vulnerable people while he destroys lives. I will make sure he understands the pain he has caused. With that, I stood up, leaving Sarah in a sea of her own tears. I had a plan to execute, a way to ensure that Jake would remain single forever. The irony of it all was not lost on me. The man who taught others about love would now be deprived of it. The days turned into weeks, and the aftermath of my confrontation with Sarah settled over our home like a dense fog. Each morning, I woke to the same haunting thoughts: betrayal, anger, and the bitter irony of our situation. Life felt surreal, as if I were living in a movie where the script had gone horribly wrong. I moved through the motions, but the warmth and comfort of our home had been replaced by a cold, suffocating emptiness. As I navigated this new reality, I often found myself lost in thought, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. The laughter we shared, the dreams we built, and the love that once felt unshakable now felt tainted. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been living a lie, a carefully constructed facade that had crumbled in an instant. The irony of her affair with a dating coach gnawed at me relentlessly. How could she seek advice from someone who didn't possess the very thing he claimed to teach? I spent hours researching Jake, digging deeper into his life and his methods. I wanted to understand the man who had so callously disrupted my life. I found more than I expected: videos of him preaching about love and relationships, testimonials from clients who had fallen under his spell, and even snippets of his social media life filled with glamorous outings and attractive women. Each revelation fueled my anger and solidified my resolve to expose him. But it wasn't just Jake's actions that haunted me. It was the realization of how easily trust could be shattered. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, in the idea that love could conquer all. Now I was left questioning everything I thought I knew about relationships. How could I ever trust Sarah again? How could I trust anyone? I found myself withdrawing from friends and family. I didn't want to explain what had happened. I didn't want to relive the pain. Instead, I buried myself in work, throwing myself into projects, hopping to distract myself from the turmoil roiling within. But no matter how hard I tried, the memories of Sarah and Jake lingered, like ghosts haunting the corners of my mind. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Jake that made my blood boil. He had posted a picture of himself with a new woman, captioned with the usual platitudes about love and connection. The irony of it all was maddening. Here he was, a man who had destroyed my marriage, now parading around as if he were the expert on love. In that moment, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let him continue to thrive while I suffered in silence. I began to formulate my plan, a way to expose Jake for what he truly was. I envisioned a series of anonymous emails to his clients, detailing the truth about his infidelity and the pain he had caused. I wanted to ensure that no one else fell victim to his false promises. As I crafted each message, I felt a rush of satisfaction. This was my way of taking control, of reclaiming my narrative. I would not be a passive victim of circumstance. I would make sure Jake faced the consequences of his actions, that he understood the pain he had caused not just to me, but to others who sought his guidance. But as I sat there, typing away, I couldn't help but wonder about the impact of my actions. Would I be any better than Jake? Would I be stooping to his level, becoming the very thing I despised? The irony of seeking revenge for a betrayal that had already cut so deeply weighed heavily on my conscience. Yet, the thought of Jake continuing to prey on vulnerable people to exploit their trust pushed me forward. I convinced myself that I was doing it not just for me, but for others who might suffer at his hands. I was determined to expose the truth, to shine a light on the darkness that had invaded my life. As I pressed send on the first email, a wave of relief washed over me. I had taken the first step in reclaiming my power. I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, in doing so, I could also begin to heal. But the emotional turmoil was far from over. While I plotted my revenge, Sarah remained a constant presence in my life, a reminder of the love that had been shattered. She tried to reach out, to apologize, to explain her actions, but I found it difficult to engage with her. Each conversation felt like a painful reminder of what had been lost, and I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her. I began to realize that this journey was not just about revenge, it was about my own healing. I sought support from friends who knew the truth, who could offer a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on. I started attending a support group for those dealing with betrayal, where I found solace in the stories of others who had faced similar heartbreak. Through it all, I began to understand the complexities of love and trust. I learned that healing takes time, that it's okay to feel angry and hurt, but it's also essential to find a way to move forward. The irony of my situation remained, but I started to see it as a catalyst for personal growth rather than a source of bitterness. As I continued to execute my plan against Jake, I also focused on rebuilding myself, piece by piece. I was determined to emerge from this experience stronger, more resilient, and ready to embrace whatever came next, whether that meant reconciling with Sarah or moving on entirely. The weeks turned into a blur of emotions, each day a new chapter in my story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately healing. I had sent out a series of emails to Jake's clients, detailing the truth about his character and the affair he had with my wife. Each message was crafted carefully, aimed at exposing him for what he truly was, a fraud masquerading as an expert in love. I felt a sense of satisfaction with every response I received, every client who expressed shock and disappointment. The thought of Jake facing consequences for his actions was a small victory in a time filled with loss. But as I watched the fallout unfold, I began to feel a twinge of guilt. I was exacting revenge, yes, but at what cost? I had transformed from a hurt husband into a man on a mission, but I was still grappling with my own pain. I was reminded that revenge often comes with a price, and I was starting to question whether it was worth it. The irony was not lost on me. I was fighting against betrayal by becoming a betrayer myself. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to reach out, her attempts to communicate growing increasingly desperate. I could hear the pain in her voice during our conversations, the regret that lingered like a shadow. She wanted to fix things, to rebuild what had been broken, but I found it difficult to let go of the hurt. I was still grappling with the betrayal, and the thought of opening my heart to her again felt like an insurmountable challenge. One evening, after yet another emotionally charged conversation with Sarah, I found myself sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. I was exhausted from the emotional turmoil, the constant back and forth of anger and hurt. I realized that I needed to make a decision, one that would shape my future and determine my path forward. I reached out to a therapist, someone who could help me navigate the complexities of my feelings. During our sessions, I began to peel back the layers of my emotional state, exploring the pain of betrayal, the anger at Jake, and the confusion surrounding my relationship with Sarah. I learned that healing isn't linear. It's a winding road filled with ups and downs, moments of clarity and setbacks. Through therapy, I also began to understand my own role in the breakdown of my marriage. I had been so focused on Sarah's betrayal that I hadn't taken the time to reflect on my own contributions to our relationship. I realized that I had become complacent, that I had taken our love for granted. The irony of it all struck me again. While I was seeking revenge against Jake for his role in our downfall, I needed to confront my own shortcomings as well. As I continued to work on myself, I also made the decision to confront Jake directly. I wanted to look him in the eye and let him know the impact his actions had on my life. It was a part of my healing process, a way to reclaim my power and ensure he understood the gravity of his betrayal. I arranged to meet him at a coffee shop, a neutral ground where I could speak my mind without fear of escalation. As I walked into the cafe, my heart raced. I was nervous, but I knew this was a necessary step. I spotted Jake sitting at a table, his confident demeanor a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. He looked up as I approached, a hint of recognition crossing his face. "Hey man," he greeted me, his tone casual as if nothing had happened. "Cut the pleasantries," I said, my voice steady. "We need to talk." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued but not yet alarmed. I took a seat opposite him, the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. "I know about the affair with Sarah," I began, keeping my tone even. "I know what you did, and I want you to understand the pain you've caused." His expression shifted, the facade of confidence faltering for a moment. "Look, I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. Didn't mean for things to get out of hand." I interrupted, anger bubbling to the surface. "You're a dating coach, Jake. You're supposed to know better. You've built a career on helping others find love, yet you're willing to destroy it without a second thought." He opened his mouth to respond, but I pressed on. "You've hurt not just me, but countless others who have trusted you. I've exposed you for what you are, a fraud. I won't let you continue to prey on vulnerable people." For a moment he looked genuinely remorseful, perhaps even a bit scared. "I didn't realize it was going to end up like this. I thought." "Thought what?" I shot back. "That you could play with people's hearts without consequences, that you could teach love while destroying it." The tension in the air was palpable, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. I didn't expect an apology, nor did I want one. I wanted him to understand the weight of his actions, to feel the impact of what he had done. "I'll make sure people know the truth," I said, my voice firm. "You may have gotten away with this for too long, but it ends now." With that, I stood up, leaving him to contemplate the reality of his actions. As I walked away from the cafe, a sense of relief washed over me. I had faced my demons, confronted the man who had caused me so much pain, and taken a step toward reclaiming my life. As I continued my journey of healing, I found myself at a crossroads. I had the power to decide my future, whether to rebuild with Sarah or to move on entirely. I realized that while revenge had provided a temporary sense of satisfaction, true healing would come from within. I decided to take things one day at a time, to focus on my own growth and well-being. Whether that meant reconciling with Sarah or embracing a new chapter in my life, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next. As I stood at the crossroads of my life, I found myself reflecting on the tumultuous journey that had brought me to this point. The betrayal, the anger, the quest for revenge, it all felt like a whirlwind that had swept me off my feet and thrown me into a storm. Yet, through the chaos, I had discovered something invaluable, the strength to reclaim my narrative. The fallout from my confrontation with Jake had been swift. His clients began to distance themselves, and the facade of his expert persona crumbled under the weight of the truth. I felt a sense of vindication, knowing that I had played a part in exposing him. But more importantly, I had learned to confront my own pain and navigate the complexities of my emotions. I realized that while revenge might have brought temporary satisfaction, it was the journey of self-discovery and healing that truly mattered. Sarah and I had spent many evenings in deep conversation, trying to unravel the knots of our relationship. She had shown genuine remorse and a willingness to understand her actions, but the road to rebuilding trust was fraught with challenges. I found myself torn between the love I still felt for her and the hurt that lingered like an unwelcome shadow. Through therapy and honest communication, I began to see glimmers of hope. We decided to take things slow, to rebuild our relationship from the ground up. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, times when the pain resurfaced, but we were both committed to the process. I learned to express my feelings without fear, while she worked on understanding her motivations and desires. The irony of her affair was not lost on either of us. It had forced us to confront the very issues that had led to her seeking validation. Outside our marriage, as the months passed, I found myself growing stronger, more resilient. I rediscovered my passions, writing, exploring new hobbies, and reconnecting with friends. I learned that healing is not a destination but a continuous journey. I began to embrace the lessons learned from the betrayal, recognizing that they had shaped me into a more self-aware and compassionate person. I also came to understand that love is complex and multifaceted. It requires vulnerability, communication, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. The betrayal had shattered my perception of what love could be, but it had also opened my eyes to the importance of honesty and authenticity in relationships. In the end, I realized that I could not let the actions of others define my happiness. I had the power to choose how I wanted to move forward. Whether that meant continuing to work on my marriage with Sarah or embracing new possibilities, I was ready to take that step. As I reflected on the entire ordeal, I found a sense of peace. I had faced my demons and emerged stronger on the other side. The irony of Sarah's affair with a dating coach had become a catalyst for my personal growth, a reminder that even in our darkest moments there is an opportunity for transformation. With a newfound sense of clarity and purpose, I looked toward the future with hope. I had learned the importance of trust, the value of communication, and the resilience of the human spirit. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that love, whether it be with Sarah or someone new, would require honesty, vulnerability, and a commitment to growth. In the end, I understood that life is not about avoiding pain, but about learning to navigate it with grace. The irony of Sarah's betrayal was no longer a source of bitterness. It was a chapter in my story that had ultimately led me to a deeper understanding of myself and what it means to love. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, whatever it may hold. And as I stepped forward, I knew one thing for certain. I would not allow betrayal to define me. I would rise above it, stronger and more resilient than ever before.